Good evening. My name is Bob Green. I'm the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, for the town of North Reading. Tonight I'm joined by our fellow voting members on this matter, Michelle Bodie and Brendan Riley. We're here to for the final, has been scheduled as the final public hearing with regard to the development application for 20 Elm Street, North Reading, Massachusetts, and the development of rental housing on that property. For purposes of this evening, I want to thank everybody for accommodating the relocation of the meeting from what was supposed to be at the high school in light of the varsity girl basketball teams hosting of their first playoff game, which I'm happy to announce North Reading prevailed 57-34. So off to a good start for them, and not that I don't enjoy my work with the zoning board, but I would have been at that game. Be clear. So with regard to tonight, we have some administrative matters that we will attend to at the outset. Specifically, prior board hearings in this matter during the continuance that generated minutes. And some change, a final review of the development. That'll be a presentation made by the applicant, excuse me. And again, as as the meeting is conducted, please take note. We'll afford everybody an opportunity to speak. Just keep in mind again that once the hearing is closed, and that is what is expected to take place tonight, that will be the end or the conclusion of any and all testimony and or effectively materials that will be considered by the board in this application and matter. Eric, could you just close the door behind you, because just quell the okay, no mistake, heater. Sorry. Okay, we've had a chance, we've compiled and I've had a chance to review the minutes from our December 11th, 2025 meeting that took place at the North Reading High School. Myself, Brendan Riley, Michelle Bodie, and Matt Martin were there on behalf of the board. I've had a chance to review the minutes. I found them to be representative and comprehensive of the hearing that evening. Can I get a second on the entry of the minutes for purposes of the record?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the entry of the minutes for the December 11, 2025 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting regarding 20 Elm Street?
Brendan Riley, aye.
Bob Green, aye.
Aye.
Michelle Bodie, thank you. So noted and entered. For the purposes of our January 22nd, 2026 meeting, once again, attended by board members, myself, Brendan Riley, Michelle Bodie, and Matt Martin. For purposes of for the compilation, I found them to be comprehensive and representative of the conversation and the conduct of the meeting that evening. I would like to make a motion to accept the minutes for, again, January 22nd, 2026. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the minutes as set forth and referenced?
Brendan Riley, aye.
Bob Green, aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Michelle. Finally, on February 12th, we did meet for purposes of continuing tonight's meeting. And at that time, we did have a quorum available, myself, Brendan Riley, Michelle Bodie. But again, the minutes have to acknowledge that even though there was no entry of any information, testimony, anything, commentary, questions, etc., there was a formal continuance of the matter to this evening, again, March 4th. Can I have I'd like to move to enter the minutes for that purpose.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of entry of the minutes for, again, February 12th, 2026, for the purposes of the 20 Elm Street application?
Brendan Riley, aye.
Bob Green, aye.
Aye.
Michelle, thank you. So that concludes the entry of the minutes for those respective meetings. So for tonight's agenda, again, this is a continued public hearing. So I know that the applicants have revised or have a final presentation with regard to it. So probably best to proceed with that, if you might. Thank you. And just for the record, names before you begin the presentation.
Thank you, Mark Ransky, Channel Crow Residential. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Just kind of as a caveat, this isn't so much a summary of what's been already shared with the board over the past couple months, but it is just it's mostly views of things that you've seen before, and then some clarification on an issue that has since been closed out with a peer reviewer, but we thought we'd make note of. So, thank you. You know, again, I think everyone's very familiar with the current site condition, proposed floor plan for Building A. Yeah, and confirming, yeah, and if you'll know with the clouding and the plan right side of the drawings, the removal of the balconies that were there previously. Similarly, you'll know the clouding again on plan right, which is removal of those balconies that were, both of which were, I should say, close to our butters on Lynch Street. There was a comment from the peer reviewer with regard to water quality unit relocation. It was on land that didn't fall under our easement control. We have thus relocated it as noted in this drawing. And this will be reflected in all further drawings. And then we shared copies of the peer review closeout letters from mid-February on traffic and civil, both from June 2, and I believe representatives of June 2 are here. And so that kind of, those are kind of the business points or items that we thought were important to call to notice at this meeting.
So my name's Valerie Moore. I'm an attorney from North London and Fish, 155 Central Boulevard in Boston. A question was relayed on to us in, I think, mid-February at this point about after the lots are subdivided, what will be the zoning compliance status of the remaining lot that is the Teresa's Restaurants. And so what you see on the screen here is a zoning compliance table for that remaining lot that we had added to our civil plans at the request of the peer reviewers back in January, which closed out that issue after it was peer reviewed. So with that, we believe the lot remains dimensionally conforming. Of course, the use itself is legally pre-existing non-conforming. Nothing about that will change. So I think you'll note in our waiver list, we do have the A&R endorsement. We believe that's all the information the board requires to address the A&R endorsement. And with that, I think we're ready to answer any questions that the board has.
So clarification on that last point, that being the subdivision. And correct me if I'm wrong. You represent the development,
Correct.
but not Teresa's.
Correct.
But the owner of Teresa's Mr. Yeba owns the entire parcel currently, and again, just so it's clearly understood, he granted authority to your offices, to the applicant, for purposes of the 40, his interest for purposes of the 40B.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, as the underlying landowner, he's consented to our application. That's how we're able to be here. We do have site control. That's acknowledged in the project eligibility letter. And that will, again, be confirmed by the subsidizing agency after the zoning process concludes. But that's how we're able to be here, is
Sure.
through his consent.
Because I'm, again, for the community at large, there have been conversations with regard to, in this matter, usually the matter comes before our board, a parcel has already been established. In this case, the subdivision in 20 Elm is contingent upon the application being approved or the construction going forward. So it's an interesting idea that the Zoning Board of Appeals, as pursuant to Chapter 40B, has a grant of authority to establish the subdivision, which usually isn't our role in this community. So once again, it's a finer point attendant to that chapter of the law, again, 40B. So I just wanted to clarify that. But again, it also is an interesting idea that Teresa's currently, the landowner is granting an understanding of the application and his interest purely for the application to build on the parcel that will be subdivided. And anything, there will be two clear and distinct owners after the fact. So in other words, Mr. Yeba will not have any ownership interest in what is now being, what we're referring to as 20 Elm. And it's a funny thing throughout this process. Right now, it is just 20 Elm, like it's the 20 Elm development, but I don't know what number Teresa's will have before or after, but I'm assuming 20 Elm will be the development for the rental properties. As this is almost a summary, and throughout the process of all these public hearings, there's been any number of documents, plans, reviews submitted, and all of those have been noted and published online by the town. We have received from the applicant a list of the recorded materials submitted by them, as well as a notation of the peer review applicant responses to the peer review that was generated. So it's important for purposes of the deliberation of the matter that will proceed after the close of the public hearing, that there's an understanding by all parties, the applicant, effectively the owner, and the town, that no additional new information will be coming in effectively after tonight's meeting. There'll be some clarification or better explanation, which I'm going to see to counsel for the town in a moment. But it's a good question. George, would you wish to address the nuance, the particulars of what will be considered before any further comments from the community?
Sure, in terms of the process from here?
Yes, I think that might be best to do now rather than later, only because I want any number of the members of the community that have taken time out to understand what will go forward after tonight, as they might choose to make, add anything further to the public hearing.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm George Pucci from KP Law. Good evening to members of the public, and thank you for accommodating me. I got very sick in one of the hearing sessions, and it was not a lack of interest in the project that I didn't come that night. So I appreciate your understanding. From here, you are anticipating, and I think the developer wants this to occur, that you go ahead and close the public hearing session at the conclusion of any type of further comment that you receive. Once you take a formal vote to close the public hearing, you can begin deliberations tonight, or you can defer it to another session to conduct deliberations. Deliberations will be a publicly noticed meeting. The public is free to come and witness the deliberations or view them online, but you can't receive any further public comment or comment from the applicant for or against the project or commenting in any other way once the public hearing is closed. So once you close the public hearing tonight, you will have 40 days to conduct deliberations on a decision. You have to reach a decision within those 40 days and get the written decision filed in the town clerk's office, which would then trigger any type of third-party appeal deadlines. It would also trigger the developer's appeal deadline if they were unhappy with in the event of an approval with conditions, if they were unhappy with the conditions, that would trigger their deadline for appealing. In the event you denied the permit, that would also trigger their appeal rights to Housing Appeals Committee. So basically, the long and the short of it is, be heard tonight or forever keep your peace. Once you close the public hearing tonight, you can't take further input, including, further comment even submitted through Kathy, trying to get that before the board. Thus, won't be permitted after the close of the public hearing. And you will only have 40 days to deliberate on that decision.
Okay, thank you. So again, what has come before this board will result in a decision of either approval or denial. With that approval, there can be conditions put forward that range from any of the matters that are attendant to the construction of and the conduct of the business in constructing, and effectively the business itself to some degree in terms of the units that is there being built. Not the way they run there. It's just how it's going to be done.
Redesign. Right?
Yes. And that's the task that will be before our board. What has to be understood about this process is that within the Chapter 40B law, there are considerations that have to be made that the developer is granted waivers or authorizations that might be different from the zoning bylaws here in North Reading or in any community in which a 40B application is submitted and considered in either granted or denied. So during the deliberation by this board, we have to keep in mind and proceed in accordance more so with with Chapter 40B that we might otherwise be if only conducting the review and deliberation under our own zoning bylaws. So it is just something that has to be understood, and I'm going out of my way to explain this here at tonight's meeting so that there's a very clear understanding that any comments or concerns will be considered by the board and are being, I would imagine, been considered by the board individually. We haven't had any reason or have not had any deliberation prior to, at any time during the conduct of this public hearing. So again, what you've heard on the record or whatever's been submitted by the board members throughout the duration of this public hearing is pretty much what we have had questions or concerns about ourselves. So I want to be sure that I've stated my understanding of what our duty and obligations are going forward after tonight's close of the public hearing, which is what we're scheduled to do. Before I open this up to the community, either Michelle or Brendan have any thoughts before taking in any further comments from the community?
I've got some questions.
Please.
One for you to start. Does close of public hearings even include administrative questions to the applicant? Like, where's that file? Where is this? Like, all communication ceases after?
Yeah, they should really come to council if you need assistance,
Okay.
as opposed to the applicant.
Okay. Thank you. All right. One for peer review, or if you don't mind. So it looked like closed out related to stormwater. Had questions about access to the property and moving things, this, that, the other. I read your letter closing it out. Would it be possible to just give a brief oral report of how you were satisfied with their answers with the change?
Sure, be happy to.
In a moment, that's great. Michael, Town Administrator, Mr. Gilberto.
I just was pointing to the podium for him.
Okay, thank you. I thought there might be something that you wanted to point out that came forward. Brendan.
I just had a question just about the things, the balconies. So it looks like, and without seeing the upper floors, I'm assuming all the bedrooms are the same in that stack.
Basically,
It's a three-bedroom. Is there any intent, because obviously having a balcony in a three-bedroom unit is nice to have, to sort of reshuffle the units and maybe make that stack a one-bedroom or studio, so then you have your three bedrooms with a balcony, and in doing so, would that now push that problem out to another individual, another butter that may have an issue with the balcony? I don't see it because you're moving it closer potentially into the courtyard, but
Yeah, we're not, it is not our intent to reconfigure the floor plan as it is. I take note of the fact that, optimally, having a three-bed with a balcony is nice to do, but that is not our intent.
So, just, this is actually, I think, might speak to what Michelle was referencing earlier. These finer point clarifications, after the close of the public hearing, again, they'll be directed through council to the appropriate party, whether it's the applicant or the peer review party. I mean,
Peer reviewer is different. You really can't run additional questions through me over to the applicant.
not questions, clarifications.
Yeah.
So
Even clarifications, you should really try to get some clarification that you need tonight. And then if there are further clarifications or you're in deliberations, I'll do my best to answer them for you based on evidence in the record. But I won't follow up with the applicant to get additional information and funnel that back to you. It's not really how it's done. So if there are clarifications, I don't anticipate that there would be anything that would require some type of substantive communication with the developer on it. You have a pretty extensive record, and you've had detailed peer review comments from third parties, Conservation Commission comments. You have a pretty big record. If you miss some bit, you need clarification on it, we can find that information. Like even tonight, the waivers. I've had the waivers for, since December, and I just saw the waiver on there about the A&R plan. So things like that, if somebody was confused about it or if they had a question, the information is probably contained in the record to give you an answer on.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, besides wanting to hear that answer at some point, I did have another question about the sign, because I did see we did get signage submitted. I didn't check the updated waiver list. Is that conforming, or would that be on the list?
So what we did was just request a waiver to the extent applicable to allow the signage as shown on the plans. We didn't do a sort of line-by-line review of what it complies with and what it doesn't for purposes of the waiver list.
Okay.
I should add too, sometimes when you're acting on a waiver request, you could refer to something. You could say, granted to the extent shown on the plan, and then identify the plan.
Okay.
Valerie, is there a copy of this one?
That's the last one.
Yeah, then I'm good after the closeout explanation.
Okay, thank you. Might be a good time, if you might, regarding the stormwater. And again, for the record, name and...
Eric Carlson, Chief Engineer, GM2, 10 Cabot Road, Medford, Mass. We became involved with this peer review, I believe beginning in November, in advance of, I believe the first hearing was in November. Provided comments to the applicant. They provided feedback, addressed many of them, and explained some others. We received comments again in December and responded to those, and back and forth again in January. And we were down to being satisfied with the stormwater design, all of our site comments. And then we received response to those comments, and it was noted that there was one piece of the drainage system, which was a water quality unit, which was removed from the stormwater system. And they explained that they didn't actually have the legal rights to install it where it was proposed, which was in the parking area of Teresa's. And so our response to that was, we think that it was actually an important feature of the stormwater system because it was going to help contribute to the cleaning of the stormwater. It's a water quality unit. It sifts out silts and as part of the process. And so they reconsidered, and they were able to relocate it onto their property, proposed property, and even further downstream, right before the discharge of the overall system, which I think is even better, because it's now going to capture more of the drainage runoff and treat it. So we reviewed that, and that was our last outstanding issue, and we're satisfied.
Thank you.
Yeah, at this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing to, or invite the public commentary, comments from the community, parties that have come tonight to tonight's hearing. If you do choose to make a comment, please proceed to the microphone at the podium, and if you would, state your name, street address, and please, at your choosing. You want to go?
Hi. Darina Helfrich, 8 Lynn Street. Thank you again for offering this opportunity to speak. Tonight, I think that as this comes to a close and the hearing closes and the deliberations start happening, I just think it's important that we keep in mind that the decisions that are made, that they're precedent setting and they're going to shape the future of 40B projects here in North Reading. And that when making decisions about the size and the density, I think it's really important to consider that if this jeopardizes the health and safety of the community. This project will impact the residents, particularly vulnerable residents on Lynn Street, and it's been established in the hydrology report. There is a probability that it will overwhelm our septic and be detrimental to our well. And for this reason, I think the project should be denied. I haven't heard any of the information from updates as far as that's concerned. The project should be denied because of its size. If the board is entertaining the idea of pursuing it, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them to reduce the size. And I understand there's economic reasons, and I think making money is important. However, it's not at the detriment, the health and the safety of the community. So I think that if it is to be approved, there should be some conditions. One, I think they should have to arrange and pay for the monitoring wells for the to check for contamination over the period or the lifetime of the development, and provide the results of the testing to the North Reading Board of Health. If the results show dangerous contaminants, I think they should offer mitigation to the property owners or affected well in the form of paying for costs associated with connecting to municipal water systems and related expenses, as well as any damages to our septics or any of the residents on Lynn Street. The fact is, the building height is far more than what is current zoning laws, and the buildings are so close to the abutting properties that they detract from our privacy and are harmful to the people that are living there. And this doesn't begin to include the other issues surrounding the limited parking, and various other issues tonight. So I think for health and safety reasons, it'd be my recommendation to deny it. And if it is approved, I'd hope that there would be those conditions. I just think we need to consider what's going to happen in the future. And when I've done my homework and I've looked at other similar developments by Trammell and Crow in Billerica, it's a quick Google search, and I found the 3 North building in Billerica. There's residents online complaining and reporting flooding due to poor construction, and they're unable to contact management. There's dog feces indoors and outdoors, and it's been over a year where they haven't had it fixed, and that's according to someone named Elizabeth Rose. So I think it's really important to know that this development may be built. I think that as a homeowner next door, it would help if there was some kind of certainty or something to support that our health and our safety will not be put at risk. So I strongly urge the board to please put any measures in place to help protect us and to do our best. Thank you.
So interestingly, I know this is, but you are the management group, so we haven't, for that other property, so.
We built the property
Okay.
Sold it about a year after we built it to an insurance aggregator company. So I can't speak to poor management practices by other parties.
Is there a flooding issue that's happening with the building?
Never
So
heard
there was
about
a building, there's a building in the residence buildings in Lorca. It was stated online that there's been a flooding issue that's been happening over a year. So again, I want to be able to, like, I think affordable housing is important. I just think that we need to have parameters in place. And again, I understand that the septic treatment facility is separate, but when we're considering height and density, I think by reducing the height and density, we're reducing that amount of that's going to affect and impact our homes. So I just think there's many towns out there that 40B projects have been put in place, and there's been units that have been cut. Like, I definitely think that this is not the right size for that piece of property. That's just my final thoughts. And I wish I could agree with you, because I am a kindergarten teacher. I want to, like, I want to see the best. I want things to happen, but I cannot not speak to protect my family. Sorry.
I can't speak to reports of, I mean, somebody complained about flooding, or I just can't speak to that. No idea. What I know is that everything we build the code. We have numerous third-party reviews to make sure that everything we build is built really well. Again, if we aren't owning the asset, we're selling it to insurance companies, pension funds, other parties, and they have large groups of people that come in and check for ADA compliance, check for waterproofing, check all those things. And these buildings are ship-shape and tight as a drum. So, I can't speak to something that was noted online. I can't really comment on it.
So maybe it's my mistake, and I apologize if it was. In a prior hearing, one of the prior continued hearings, I wasn't aware that, is there a plan to sell this unit? Once it's constructed, is there already a calendar in place?
No, I can tell you that definitively.
And what's the expected, I know that there's no hard and fast because, you don't know what offer is going to be made, but do you have a planned ownership and management term?
No. I mean, we are talking to a couple different equity investment parties right now, and we have not selected a partner. Some of those partners may want to hold the asset for an extended period. Some of those partners may want to build it, stabilize it, and then transact it. But we're really nowhere near that part of the process yet.
So using that term, we're nowhere near that process yet. I apologize. This isn't my business. Can you give me a more layman's understanding of what that means?
So this is, $100 million project, to pick a round sum. It's probably, in terms of capital structure, $60-ish million in debt and $40 million in equity. And we will, we are the developer, we are the general partner. We fund this process, the design, and then we are also the builder. We will bring on an equity partner who will comprise, anywhere from, probably no less than 80% of the equity. So, with that, call it, if you want to make the math kind of simple, 32 million of equity and 8 of, call it, sponsor equity or our equity. Again, I'm not committing to any of this, it's just kind of giving you a schematic. When our part, so on a project like this, we anticipate having numerous interested parties for equity and for debt. And again, some of those parties may say, we really like this community, we like this project, this is a project that, you know, we want to invest in, but then we want to own it. And we would, usually after full lease up, there's a transfer mechanism that gives them the right to buy out our position. That is one option that has occurred. Other options are they'll say, you know, this is a great project, we'd like you to put on the market. And again, we're typically selling a $100 million project. It's being sold to a pension fund, a insurance company, an institution. That level of detail of the capital structure, you know, it's very premature at this stage. We're certainly talking to people, but until the entitlement process is complete, and really once we commence drawings, you know, with the fact that the drawing process is a solid 6 months, so there's a lot of time to, you know, build and explore the capital relationships.
But those capital relationships, and I've expressed this probably from the outset, concerns of this community extend past the mere construction and initial commencement of the occupation by renters. So you can't, correct me, tell me if I'm wrong, you can't really guarantee how these buildings are going to be managed, probably past anything past.
I mean, what I can guarantee,
year, 2 years.
What I can guarantee is, again, using $100 million, there will be an equity investment of $40 million into this project, right? And then there'll be a debt investment as well. People that are investing $40 million are not losing that investment. They're not going to invest in things that aren't going to derive appropriate economic return. They're not going to invest in things that they will then poorly manage, so that will diminish their investment. You know, this is not a 10-unit, you know, corner lot deal by some local developer. This is sophisticated investors and allocators of capital. And they're investing in the community, they're investing in the asset, they're investing in the economic performance of the asset. They're not, you know, doing that on a whim. You know, the period by which a capital partner will engage will be quite lengthy in detail. So once someone's investing, they're investing, you know, to make money, and they're not going to invest in an asset that's going to be poorly managed, because a poorly managed asset will not make money, will not derive the returns that they need for the investment they're making.
Yes, but that's on scale. So let's just take, for the sake of this, and again, I don't like hypotheticals, but let's say hypothetically a development that was built by Trammell had a failure, maybe a year, 2 years, however many years past that. That burden now falls upon whichever interest owns and or manages the property. It could have been built perfectly, soup to nuts, right on at the time that it was constructed. But the failure happened subsequent to that. That's not your responsibility, because you have no ownership or, you know, management obligation past that because of the transferal of that asset. And by asset, I mean, in this case, the buildings that were built and the systems that were, but you do understand that the idea that, yes, I can understand on a larger macro or, you know, economics 105 exam, we're going to try to maintain the status or the viability of a project because it's going to be worth more if we do, but that's scale. So if there's a small problem, well, that's no big deal. This community has concerns about not only how this development is built, the manner in which it's built, but the subsequent management of it. past your developing of it. And that's always been my concern above all else
So, I
in
guess-
this. And I know that you can't guarantee anything past your direct relationship with, in this case, 20 Elm Street. But in the event there's a failure of systems, is that just going to have to go through the usual process of determining cause and/or responsibility, if that's even a fair characterization?
So I do want to be clear, the town always has continuing enforcement powers. These sort of speculative concerns are really sort of beyond the scope of a 40B hearing on the project as proposed. In the event that there is I don't know what you mean by failure, because that could mean many different things, but there are building codes and health and sanitary codes that, and certainly residential developments are very highly regulated in that sense. The town has continuing enforcement powers if there were an issue like that, but that's not within the scope of what is before the board this evening. As I'm sure the board is well aware, its decisions can't be based on prospective future violations, so.
No, they can't be, but what I can say is this, that during the pendency of these public hearings, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but we do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna make sure this. That all came with a timetable, and that timetable is basically based upon however long they own it. In fact, I know specifically when asked about the density, why does it have to be 200 units? The explanation was very clear to me. That's what makes it marketable after the fact. But correct me if I'm wrong, when I asked if you had a smaller one. Yes, we built a smaller unit of 175, but this is the number we want. Fair enough. And again, in order to have so many of the units be affordable so we can comply with, that, I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative here. And again, I understand what council just pointed out. But these are members of the community that this might be their only chance to voice these things. And I hear that concern. And all due respect, I have to go into this believing that with every confidence that the systems aren't going to fail. And by systems, I mean stormwater, management internally. I mean, so I just want to be, there's some level of confidence that has to come back out from this. And, inherently in anything that comes before this board, whether it's an applicant trying to run a home business, or in this case, TC trying to build a 200, there has to be a confidence and a faith factor. And I just want to try our best to have an understanding that that faith and confidence is understood, because that's what best serves my community. And that's, just the way I see this. So when you tell me that, yes, it's not a 40B situation to talk about prospective problems that, one man's failure is another man's, temporary problem that I'll cure. I get that. I sincerely do. My hands have been tied from the start of this. Our hands have been tied from the start of this. So be it. But at the same time, if we have a problem with parking, we might be able to do something. You might not be the one who will hold the role of we. It might be past your point. And we have to figure out ways to make sure that these things don't just kind of develop and never get addressed. And while you can tell me that there are, code requirements and the like, sometimes those don't just as readily get addressed as we all want to believe they might be. And in that concern and how those things, I'd like to believe that we have an opportunity to think about them before our deliberation begins.
And, you know, I think that the way we build, which, again, from Bill Rook on, is we are a vertically integrated developer. You know, the people that are building are in the offices just down the way from me. When we find problems, and you always find problems, I think with a third-party general contractor, there's a lot of finger pointing and covering, and that's endemic to that part of the business. I was on that side of the business. I know it. When your builder is your coworker, you are incented to solve problems, not paper them, not point fingers, not change order them, which is the incentive in a third-party building environment. So, you know, again, I can't speak to something that was stated about a flood. I just can't, you know. But we build really good buildings. I would have more than great comfort to direct you to the building commissioners of any of the towns we've worked in. We're very good at what we do. We're very, very good at what we do. This is what we do. We build this 4-story garden suburban product. Our design and engineering team is the top in New England. We have the best professionals. Everything we do, as I said earlier, is peer-reviewed on our own side, not externally, and we have numerous third-party contractors coming in, checking on ADA compliance, checking on waterproofing and building envelope compliance, checking when. So, you know, we build really, really good buildings. And when we transacted them, they've sold well because they're well built and people know that. I mean, again, as you said, you know, again, I can't prove against a hypothetical, right? You know, I can't. But I know that we've built a couple thousand units in Eastern Mass. They're great buildings. They've performed well. They perform well from the perspective of the consumer, of the resident who likes them, and we have good, you know, good stickiness in terms of people releasing. They perform well when they transact because they do well with the rents. And, you know, we've never been called about any issues with failings of, I don't know really what it will be. If we know there's a problem when we're building it, we're addressing it immediately. You know, we have had situations where a pipe burst during the winter because it was loaded and exposed to the weather and stuff, and, you know, you take care of that stuff. You do it right, you know, and that, again, is the benefit of being vertically integrated, is the GCs works for me effectively, and they do a good job. They make sure they build a good job. If they do it poorly, it's problems for them, it's problems for me.
Once again.
Hi, this is Darina Helfrich again. I just wanted to say that what was called speculative is listed in the hydrology report on the town's website, not done by me. It was done by the hydrology expert. I have screenshots of it on my phone where it says it has the potential to overwhelm our systems. So that's not speculative, that's listed there. So I would like to hear what or how it was determined that it will now not cause that damage.
It was by virtue of the hydro-geo being issued, that the state is very comfortable, the state DP is very comfortable that these impacts won't occur.
So when
Otherwise,
I
it would
spoke
not
to the
be issued.
state, that was not what I was said. It shouldn't was what I was told. They said it shouldn't cause problems to you. But
This doesn't
that-
fall under the purview of the ZBA, but
But the density
as
does.
we've spoken before, the fact that the hydro-geo was issued, if the state had a scintilla of concern that would create adverse impact to you, they would have issued the hydro-geo.
The state had to look it up when I called, and they told me it shouldn't. And so I would like some security that it will not. And I'm not being speculative when the information that's in black and white in front of me says that it has the potential to overwhelm my system. I want some assurance that it's not. That's all.
Sure.
Mr. Carlson from GM2.
Eric Carlson, GM2. I'm just thinking out loud here and trying to stay within my lane. Okay, the hydrology report, I don't believe that was peer reviewed by us. We peer reviewed the stormwater report, and I'm not familiar with that particular report. But during the peer review and through that process, working back and forth with the applicant's team, it's our opinion that the system as designed should work as intended, conveying the stormwater, including all the roof drainage, parking drainage, and bringing it through the system to discharge. Things do happen. Okay, I've been on that side of the business myself. When you blast, for instance, you do a pre-blast survey, extends out 600 feet. I don't believe there's any blasting proposed.
We don't think so. We don't know.
You never know. Okay, you do a pre-blast survey, which involves entering people's homes, photographing their foundations, identifying all existing cracks, so that you have a snapshot of the pre-existing conditions. And then in the event, if a new crack shortly after the blasting appears, okay, then there's grounds at that point for the blaster, usually, through their insurance, to remedy that. I'm wondering, I understand there's concerns with the septic system and potentially a well. If there could be some baseline documentation accomplished on the septic system, maybe an inspection, okay, prior to the commencement of any work accomplished. I don't think they're a big lift, although I'm not in that business. Right? Maybe the well could be sampled and tested and documented. Again, you'd have two baselines at that point. That in the event, within a certain amount of time, that there was a claim of damage, you at least have a point to begin with. It's often done with wetland mitigation. Okay, that's monitored generally over the course of 3 years. There's no wetland mitigation on this project, as far as I understand. Maybe that small area. But that would be monitored for 3 years, and in the event that it was failing, okay, the plants weren't, thriving. Usually they do an assessment, and a certain percentage of the plants have to be thriving, alive. Then there's replanting. It could be something along the same theme, okay, where at least there's a baseline. There could also be monitoring wells set in a particular location, okay, in between the project and these properties. And again, they're not sophisticated. They have to, a geologist would have to plan it, but usually it's a 3 or 4 inch pipe that goes down a certain depth, and then on a regular basis, whatever that is, somebody will go out and document through the seasons the height of the groundwater. Okay, so I'm just suggesting that there could be options that could be put in place that might help to alleviate any of those concerns, or to help document those situations in the event that there was a claim of a failure of a septic system, or a failure of the well, contamination of the well.
So if I could address this is all regulated by the Department of Environmental Protection as part of our groundwater discharge permit process. In the frequently asked questions document we submitted, we did put this information, even though it's beyond the scope of the hearing, to be available to the public, but DEP has already approved a plan for 3 monitoring wells. They will be tested and sampled regularly, and the reports of that are available online to anybody who wishes to view them at any time. So there will be monitoring wells. It's a requirement of our groundwater discharge permit, and that was already approved and reviewed by DEP.
Yeah, and the document, it's a publicly available, And our response to the frequently asked questions includes the locations of the wells as well as gradient information in the document.
Thank you for that notation. Please.
Christine McNeil, 4 Lynn Street. Just, again, echoing some of the same concerns that we've raised before, the size of the buildings, the density, the close proximity. We've been using words like potential. I'd like to offer up the word probability, right? Because you can never guarantee that there is a 0 probability that there isn't going to be some kind of unforeseen circumstance or some issue that occurs downstream. They've already said that they don't always maintain ownership. So I appreciate all of the meetings and the work and the discussion and the information that we've been afforded throughout this process and meeting with Mr. Baranski. But we have to, I would ask you to consider there's a huge probability that downstream from here, we're not going to be dealing with Trammell Crow. They're going to sell it. So what is the probability that there are issues? What is the probability that it's not 0? But I think that those probabilities have to factor in to how we make the decision, because it does have a massive impact on the town, not just the close abutters, but the town in general. And so I'd ask that you really, consider a lot of those factors as we're going through this, because the probability is not 0. I can't tell you what the probability is, but I can guarantee you it's not 0. So, thanks.
And you had conversations regarding the wall.
Yes.
How did that, I don't know if you made it to the last meeting, but
Yeah, I was at the last one.
did that,
Yeah, we had a discussion. The landscape architect came out. Unfortunately, they came to do the property walk on Martin Luther King Day, which was the day we had that big snowstorm the day before. So the visibility was back to what it normally would be in the summer. So they didn't get to see the whole impact of this time of year when there's no leaves in the way. I do feel like they listened to us last time when they made their presentation. They said that they were going to put some trees and things in, but it wasn't exactly determined where they would be. They would kind of look at that as they progressed through the thing. There was better information presented. We had heard 21-foot wall. That's not right directly. It's 20 feet off to the right of my property line, so we'll still see it. But across where my direct abutting is, it would be closer to 8 to 12 feet because it would slope up. But it's still a wall. And the ground level is going to be about level with the second floor of my house. And I get that the building is set back and you've got an angular sight line, but you're still asking us to see a 4-story building that has a peak roof that will bring it to higher than a 5-story building. It has impacts. It's not going to be hidden. It's not going to be, out of sight, out of mind. It's going to be 200 units of people. Yes, great, you remove those balconies so they're not hanging over my backyard, but those people are still going to be there. That's a lot of people and a lot of apartments and a lot of cars and a lot of everything in a very small area, very close to the Ipswich River, an endangered river that towns downstream from us get their drinking water from.
so, for you specifically with regard, I know there was continued conversation about planting.
Yes.
Is there a plan in place that has been given to you so that it's not
What was communicated was verbal, and it was, we'll figure out what plantings we need where, when we get them.
Who's we?
Trammell Crow and their landscape architect. So there's nothing concrete, we're going to put a 6-foot tree here, a 2-foot shrub here. There's nothing at all, even in the number of plantings or exactly what they are. It was, we hear you, we drew some trees in there saying, yeah, we're going to throw plantings and stuff in there. We'll figure out what it is when we're in process.
In the draft conditions we provided to the board, we did include a condition basically indicating that we will work with both the owners of 4 and 8 Lynn Street to coordinate plantings during construction, and that was in part designed so that we can look at it at different times of year to make sure that plantings are placed appropriately with the existing vegetation to provide screening. And we did include review for the director of planning in the draft condition. So I did want to make it clear that we did, it's the intention to include that in the comprehensive permit if that's the board's desire, so that that does become an enforceable commitment.
So, if I could just add, if it helps, again, I think the thought was, as the weather changes and view lines, it's just, as you said, that was not an optimal day. So, if it gave parties comfort, could we commit to, at a minimum of 4 trees of 3.5 caliber of this species and 4 trees of this caliber of this species at a minimum to be located if it's on your land where you want. I think if what you're looking for is a tighter quantification of scope, I think our view was we think we could do a lot better later, but if there was a desire to tighten it up so that it's kind of explicit, I'm pretty fine with that.
Well, I was answering your question. We hadn't gotten, there wasn't a specific, we're going to do this, this, and this,
Well, and that we moved the garage, as you'll recall.
Yes, you did move the one garage per my request because it will block some of the sight line and some of the headlights from shining in the bedroom windows.
And we also have a fence, and actually the 6-foot fence will do the shielding of the headlights.
It's gone now. Did
Sorry.
you have another question for me?
No.
Okay.
So how does this work for us? So, we come up with, let's say it's approval with conditions, and this is a condition, but it still seems so it's somewhat speculative. So is it our role to be specific?
It would be very difficult for you to, in deliberations, be specific on the type of specifics that Mr. Bransky just noted.
Right.
Trees and certain, how would you know?
Sure. But how do we safeguard that? Isn't that's what a condition really is? It's a safeguard.
Yeah. Typically, you'll have a landscape plan that's approved. This is in addition to that. You'll have to look at the draft condition that they proposed on it. Doesn't sound like it provides enough
Specificity
for the property owner. But there's not too much else you're going to be able to do.
We did tie it in the draft condition, we did tie it to the issuance of our certificate of occupancy, so that does
open the window of time.
What do you mean?
You mean that goes beyond?
No, it's tied to the document, so it's a condition of them granting.
That we have to implement this, right? So that gives you some, I would say, pretty good leverage to make sure that we comply with it, but in the draft condition, we did propose a role for the director of planning to sort of be involved and review the plan and make
Is
sure
that really actually leverage?
the certificate of occupancy.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is that this particular item.
What is going to be done, so how would you determine whether it's done to your satisfaction or not, right? Because it's too vague about what the plan actually would be.
Might just.
No, you mean, there's vagueness in what they're asking for.
No, I'm not laughing because of it. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, because you can't have it subject to subsequent approvals. All you can have it subject to is that somebody checks for conformance with specific conditions. So if the condition itself is too vague, it's very difficult for that individual to confirm that before the certificate of occupancy.
Check a box, you really want to assign a quantity of trees, the caliber of trees.
Can I go no less than?
You could.
I mean, it's a condition. You know, they have every right to believe that the condition is, pick your word, capricious or vague
Or
or,
they could seek a modification.
okay.
They could say, we'd like to modify condition 32 to.
I think
Plan.
I'm heartened by the idea that everybody seems to be on the same page. You want to assist in maintaining or assisting in trying to minimize the effect of the development upon this abutter, neighbor. I like neighbor better. And I'm heartened by that. Really, I am. But I don't want it to become temperamental in trying to further that relationship. So for us, in terms of deliberation and consideration of conditions, so there is still some back and forth even after the fact. Not in the immediacy of determining the deliberation and the decision,
Yeah.
but in the modification of a condition after, if there is one.
Well, conditions are commonly modified after a permit issues.
Okay.
That happens all the time. Because
Sure.
there are plan changes that come up and they get further down the line on the completeness of their plans. So commonly there's modifications made. You don't want to have so many conditions that are vague that you have to have all these modifications. But right now, the current state of the information, you're not able to incorporate a specific plan because one hasn't
One
been
doesn't
formulated
exist,
yet.
yes.
I'll look at the proposed condition. Frankly, I hadn't, I mean, there's a lot of material. I'll look at it. I didn't see the proposed condition on it. I can try to tighten it up a little bit. The main parameters, though, is that you can't subject it through subsequent required approvals. You can only essentially condition the permit on, at different stages, building permit stage or certificate of occupancy stage. Someone is looking to review the conformance of the final plans with the conditions of approval. But not, you can't put in new approvals that are required down the line. In other words, you can't say, you shall submit a planting plan later on that will be reviewed and approved by the building inspector, something like that. You have to have the conditions that you're specifying what is required now, and then someone would end up confirming that it complies with that. Here, it's a little bit vague about that they're going to work with the neighbor. You know, we don't know yet what they're going to do and if the neighbor's going to be happy with it or not. So you'll do your best to condition.
Right, and I don't want to tie that to an occupancy that would ultimately end up being
further dispute,
further,
litigation.
well, you know, disagreed with as not being,
And the developer's place to go will be Housing Appeals Committee if they're claiming that you're not enforcing the conditions of your own permit. In other words, that you're delaying a certificate of occupancy because they're entitled to.
correct me if I'm wrong, they're not going to exactly care that this person who lives on this small street, they're just going to look at it as, here's somebody like this, it's, I don't think, I've never met any jurist who has been happy with vagary.
If the point, though, is to block sightlines, could we not add a condition saying, put enough trees in to block the sightline to the property? I mean, we could be specific without naming trees.
That's still goes to
You have to.
It would need to be.
contract
Quantity,
101.
whether it's,
Totally paint a picture of you. Well, I did a crappy
100
job.
feet and how they're spaced and the diameter.
I mean, I'll look at the proposed condition, I'll call them as best I can if you're But typically, you'd be approving a specific landscape plan, just like you would be for the project itself. If you're incorporating something that that's enforceable as a condition, you would typically have something pretty specific.
My apologies, but this was raised earlier in prior meetings, and it just kind of got kicked down the road, and I'm sincere when I say this. I'm heartened. I'm genuinely not glad, but somewhat impressed that they took time. And granted, this is not, but I understand. So I just don't want it to fall through the cracks or find out after after the conclusion of this public hearing that we can't best ensure this plan.
Right, and
I choose not to use the word plan because that suggested something on paper.
Right.
Hope.
yes. So both of us, the Helfriches and I, we really do appreciate the time that Mr. Borensky took to meet with us, to hear us, to listen to us, and not just, because in terms of this whole project, they're the 1,000-pound gorilla and we're just the little peanut on the ground. So it was very heartening for us that he was willing to have those conversations, and we can agree to disagree on whether we think that the project should go forward or not, but if it goes forward, yes, we're heartened by the fact that there was the willingness to move the garage, to talk about the fence, to talk about the plantings. And I understand, as a quality manager, the need to remove the ambiguities. I'm not sure how we go about, right? If we specify a number, there's no way to know the number of plantings right now that would accomplish what we're looking for. But I understand the board's position of having to have something now because we can't impose additional conditions later. It does put everything into a little bit of a conundrum because you're trying to be explicit about something that you have no information about.
Just for context, the reason that the language kind of is instead is if we committed to a plan, right, and we indicated precise locations of trees, and then in the spring we find there's a huge boulder there, do we move that tree 4 foot over? Now we're not complying with the plan. Do we? This wasn't like a get out of jail free. This is just, it's not the time to be committing to where things go, but we are overwhelmingly not intending, we're going to plant trees to assist in minimizing view lines. I don't know how to make it tighter while still providing the I don't know if it's ambiguity, but just ability to adjust based on, oh wow, there's a bunch of ledge there. That's not a place to plant a tree, or something, whatever. So.
Yeah, I'll work on the condition and see if, I'll look at it, see if I can tighten it up a little bit. I mean, you're going to have a modicum of an assumption of good faith. It doesn't help the developer when they're seeking their certificate of occupancy to be unreasonable with the neighbor. So I'll look at the condition, I'll do my best to tighten it up, knowing that we can't have it subject to subsequent approvals, nor are we ready to put specifics on the exact trees in there. So in the event that you ask me to draft an order, approval with conditions, I will look at the proposed condition and I will work on it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I have a bunch of different stuff to say, but about the trees and the plantings, is there any way to put a dollar amount? Sorry, Alan Helfrich, 8 Lynn Street. Is there any way to put a dollar amount on it so that it's in the contract, like X amount of dollars for 8 Lynn Street, X amount of dollars for her, in order to, this way it's in
That
writing?
that is, oh, you know, that is a way that it's been done, yes. You know, the only reason I want to be careful with the dollar amount is I'm going to buy trees for a lot less than you'll buy trees, because I'm buying hundreds of trees.
Mhm.
So my per tree value, so if I said it's X thousand dollars, from your perspective, if you went to the nursery, you're not going to be able to get that. You know, so it just may not look like it's in line with the impact of the trees. Frankly, a general count and caliber would be ideal. Just because then there's no, it's a 3.5 caliber coniferous. It's 4 of them. And we think they're going to go here, here, and here, but we reserve the right to move them around based on, you know, field conditions, which is what the proposed language says. And it's too deciduous, I don't, you know what I mean? I'm just kind of making this up. You know, if I sign, I mean, I can go out and assign, I can call our construction guys, and call landscapers, we can look at what the landscape architect has prepared, and I can, you know, throw a number at them.
But it would be a guess.
No, I don't think, no, it wouldn't be a guess, because we'd be talking to landscapers that we are likely to buy the whole landscape package from. I guess the only caveat is that, like, that's what I'm buying the trees for. You guys, if you were to buy them, you're buying them at 4X. That, so it isn't useful for you as a number. What is useful is as a tool to make sure we do the trees, which I'm, again, very comfortable with. It's just the the details are kind of a fuzzy part. So I guess I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered that really well.
No.
Yes, I guess yes, I would commit to that.
Okay.
Just so, but you know, the caveat that if you go to Mahoney's and you're like, well, I ain't gonna buy a lot. Well, no, it wouldn't for you,
Mhm.
but I'm not buying from Mahoney's.
Okay. So that was the one question. The other one is, there's been no talk here really much about sewage treatment plant. We have talked about the stormwater, that the overflow is going to go into the Ipswich River, right? That's what they've said before. And it's okay, because Teresa's water already goes into the Ipswich River, so, you know, it's allowed to do that, which I don't think it is. But if they can't contain all the stormwater, how are they going to contain all the sewage water that on the property from going into the Ipswich River? Like, now you got to realize it's somewhere, not exact numbers, but 50,000 gallons at full capacity a day in sewage. And if I'm not mistaken, 350,000 people get their drinking water from the Ipswich River. So is it okay to put sewage into their drinking water? Is that allowed? We're already putting stormwater from Teresa's, from this property, and now we're going to be putting sewage into the Ipswich River? I know they say it's treated, but I don't think the 350,000 people that drink from that are going to want sewage in their water. So if they can't contain the stormwater, they're definitely not going to be able to contain the sewage water. This project is just way too big for this property. It's just too massive, too big. If it was a quarter of the size, it still would be a problem. Does anyone have any answers for any of that? And if this turns out to be an Aaron Brockovich situation, who do people sue? Do they sue the town of North Reading for allowing them to build this? Do they sue this contractor? Do they sue their boss, Nicholas Yedber? Where do those lawsuits go? Because there is going to be a problem with sewage going into the Ipswich River, and people are going to be drinking it. And going into my well, and I'm going to be drinking it. So I just want to know, is all of this allowed? I'm done with my statement. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Sure. Thank you. If you have something to say.
Yeah, I mean, again, this doesn't fall under the purview of
No, I know.
the board. You know, the hydro-geo document addresses a lot of these questions. It is a publicly available document. I don't know where the 50,000 gallons per day came from. That's not even close to accurate. It's 37,000. The water that is going into the water table is, thank you so much, is treated to the level of potable. That is tested constantly. It is tested by third parties. It is tested by the state. The safeguards that are implemented by the state to make sure that these plants are only releasing potable effluent, it's very clear, eminently clear. I would argue that the proximity of septic systems to the river is a much greater risk to the river than the potable water that will be going into the system. Now, that being said, the peer review has already clarified that this project can manage its stormwater. So I don't know where that's kind of coming from, that it can. It actually can.
You guys are the one that actually said it's going to overflow into the Ipswich River, the stormwater. You guys said that.
Yeah, at that one point, that's a pre-existing condition. All the other water that's being managed on the site is being managed through various chambers, and I'm not going to get into it because I'm not an engineer, but it's been peer reviewed, and it's
So just one quick thing. We have a massive rainstorm. Your rainwater is overflowing into the Ipswich River.
and all the systems are designed to manage.
And you're at,
I think it's a 100-year storm.
And you're at, no, it's not a 100-year storm. It's every like 2 years now. It was a 100-year storm.
Again, hypotheticals are.
Anyway, so you're at maximum capacity in your building. You get a rainstorm. How many gallons of sewage water? So I got like 50,000 if it's fully occupied.
No, that's not it, again, but
What is the number?
I just told you, 37,000.
37, so that would mean so you guys are reducing the building because,
It's in the hydrogeo, so I can't, we're not going to debate it because, again, this doesn't fall under the purview of the board. It's a publicly available document. I just want to clarify that the number that you're throwing out is not.
what does fall
not
under the
accurate.
purview of the board is that actually the lawsuits that are gonna come when you dump a sewage in there. I know you say it's all portable, whatever, but it doesn't take out a lot of stuff, and it still is sewage. No one wants to drink that.
It absolutely does take it out. That's the whole premise of potable water. The water that will be leaving our plant is potable.
I think you should send a letter to the 350,000 people that are gonna be drinking your sewage water and see if it's okay with them.
And I would say that the proximity of septic systems to the river comprises a much greater risk.
I don't think so.
Overwhelmingly so. Overwhelmingly so.
I don't think so.
And there's a lot of septic systems in the immediate area.
500 people versus, an acre of property with a septic system, 500 people on 2 acres, a family of 5 on 2 acres, a big difference.
Treated versus untreated is a very big difference, you're right. A septic system is an untreated system in which, we don't need to get into the niceties of septic systems, but the plants that we're building and that operate throughout Eastern Mass, because this is a condition that is quite common in Eastern Mass. So what we're building is not something that's new or unique. It's something that's been proven overwhelmingly throughout Eastern Mass, and in particular the North Shore. We're putting treated potable water that is being tested on many levels by many different parties. So you don't have to trust me, I get that, but the third party that tests it and the state that tests it will all confirm that water's potable. And it's
Potable or not, I don't want to drink it. Like,
I don't know.
you wouldn't want to drink it? You wouldn't take a cup? You wouldn't take a cup of it and drink
The whole
it?
idea is that this is about climate resiliency. That water goes through the groundwater, gets to groundwater, goes through the process that any other water that is exposed to various pollutants in the street and permeates down, it's the same process. It gets down to the water table and it's clean water.
I look at it as being a problem in the future, and the only solution would be for North Reading to put a sewage plant somewhere far away and actually absorb the cost for your building.
What would the North Reading sewage plant be different from my plant?
It would be away from the river.
Okay, but
You're working with DEP on your,
yes, very much so. Yeah. And again, the DEP's already done what I guess I'd characterize as their preliminary initial review, and it's a very thorough process, and they have issued, our ability to proceed. If that was not the case, we would not be here, frankly, because we would not have a viable solution to managing.
But you'll continue with the water quality unit and comply with all state law.
The water quality unit's
Yeah.
different, but yes, that's
You'll
stormwater.
follow it
Yeah.
through the process. and-
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yes, you would typically condition our permit on compliance with all other
applicable.
required state laws.
Yep. Just checking.
And for purposes of increasing the checking of the water content, is that a viable condition?
I mean, not, arguably no,
Sure.
because it really is subject to the jurisdiction of Mass DEP and the groundwater discharge permit.
Right.
People should understand too, that's another administrative process. It's not before you if they want to be involved in that, know what's going on, make comments, review that. That's a separate jurisdictional body and a separate administrative process that does not involve your purview.
Can I ask one more? Sorry. What is a caliper? You kept using it for the
Sorry. I mean, it's the,
size.
Diameter, yeah.
With
Sorry,
Width.
I don't speak tree. Thank you.
it's
Most of us don't.
sorry, it's a little contact, roughly for age, but some tree, it's just, I mean, you could also say root ball size, I guess. I mean, but it's.
Help me. Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
Please, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
hi, good evening. My name's Kathy Stewart. I live at 13 Riverside Drive in North Reading. I have a couple of questions. You do, I assume, have a budget set for the landscaping, do you not?
A budget?
You would have had to put it in your proposal, would you not, if you were figuring out how much this was going to
Proposal
cost?
to whom?
Well, not a proposal. When you put this all together in your plan
yeah.
to figure out how much it costs, you must have allocated some amount of monies for landscaping.
Yes.
Okay, you did. With that, if there is, say, an overrun as you're building with, say, I don't know, rugs or building things or cost of building because of tariffs, whatever, will you be, I would, and I don't want to use the word assume, but you would have the ability then to transfer the funds from that particular budget into the other budget to make the other one whole, because that might be, a building thing might be much more important than planning.
Well, okay, number one, I don't know why the word "sue" was brought up. I don't know how that has any bearing in this. But,
I'm not
this-
talking about storage, I'm just talking about the plantings and the trees.
Yeah, so money is allocated to all kinds of stuff at this stage, and as we proceed through the drawing process, we refine the drawings and the pricing, and then we get to a point where we get to what's called a GMP or pricing set, and we price that, and we're talking to subs the whole time, but sometimes the subs are giving us a very general price because they know it's far out. In the end, yeah, all that money is permeable. If money needs to go from here to there, it does.
Okay.
That being said, we have a landscape plan that will be in the record set, and we will be obligated, I believe, to perform to the record set landscape. So if it indicates a tree and a species, we have to put a tree there and that tree, that species. So I mean, money's fungible. It goes all over the place. In the end, we have to perform to the record set for everything, not just.
All right, so you still would have the ability to change around the budgeting for that, if need be.
I
Take
mean,
money from one pot and put it into the other?
You probably have a contingency.
yeah, I mean, yeah, when we have a
Okay.
contingency, yeah, I mean, I guess I have a hard time, but
That's all
yeah.
right. Having said that, there has been, and it certainly was not another issue in our town, where people, the contractor promised folks that they would have trees and they would have bushes and they would have plantings. They put in a tree that was like a foot tall. They put in bushes that were like minuscule. They all died. The people the next year had to come back and went through double B hockey sticks to try and get anything from that contractor back. When you go out to buy trees, I understand, you're gonna get a lot more than I would ever get. But there's a very big difference between planting a tree that's a foot and planting a tree that's 6 foot.
Right, and that's why the caliper kind of matters. Caliper kind of reflects size and age. And that's why I use that sort of specification. If I said 1 caliper, that's a twig, right? You know, a 3.5 caliper, again, depending on species, that could be a 8-foot tree, it could be a 15-foot tree, depending on the species.
Right.
When we are buying our landscape package, and frankly, everything we're doing, and this goes back a little bit to the chairman's questions, you know, we're buying contracts. And when we buy the contracts, we're also getting a 1-year warranty. So after things are planted, we have, you know, usually we schedule at month 11 a review and walk with the landscaper, and there are always trees that die. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
There are shrubs that die. There's, you know, and sometimes it's because there's tough weather. Sometimes it wasn't a great product. And then there's, you know, I mean, but that's all built into their pricing assumptions. But they owe that to us. So to the extent that we owe X trees to 8-lin and X trees to 4-lin, whatever they are again, you know, if I'm doing that, those fall under the warranty. And so there is a, you know, I mean, again, I call it, usually we schedule it, you know, a month before the dead end, right, to do that. Then, you know, if a tree has failed, then generally it's now on a watch list for a period of time. So sometimes we have the right to then go look back another 6 months after that. But again, that's subject to specific contracts. We don't want to work landscapers that give us crummy trees. We want things that, because it's our property. Remember, our property, we're going to be buying a couple hundred trees. I don't want to keep recycling the trees. So, again, it's, you know, we can talk hypotheticals, but the incentives are in alignment. They don't want to give me bad trees because they know I'm going to be knocking on the door and getting new trees out of them. I don't want that to happen to my neighbors either, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen. The same way I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen on my property.
Thank you. Can they put in contingencies that the caliber, which I understand is the width of the tree, you don't want a twig, you want something decent. Can they put in options for that? Perhaps not by species, but by however it would be plausible and feasible to do, that they would have a certain caliber tree that would be going in, that it's not going to be less than, I have no idea how much a caliber is, but let's say a tree that's 5 is here, a tree that's 1 is here. Could they put in options that behind the houses or wherever, you would not put in something smaller than a certain caliber?
Yeah, that's kind of what I mentioned earlier.
All right.
Yeah. Now, I think I'd interject. We would want to specify species.
Yeah, you're probably going
You know, and the idea behind that is coniferous will create visual buffers during the winter season when all the other trees are down. Deciduous will perform, get bigger, more dense. So you know, the landscape architect is going to propose things or has drawn things already that, you know, are trying to achieve goals year-round, not just
one season.
One snapshot.
All right, I understand it. Thank you very much. I have one other question, and that's for the continuity of the project, I guess is how we put it. We understand clearly that you will have the ability to sell the property at some point.
Yeah.
That's fine, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I assume you would do it once you've met your profits or whatever that you need to make it feasible for everyone else. When you sell the property, it will go to an investment firm, let's say. My concern, and I think some of the other concerns, are that, I don't want to use the word hypothetically, because we've seen certain developments or properties that the second firm comes in, it looks really good. They take it, they squeeze all the money out of it, and they're gone. And then you're left with a property that, because they haven't managed it, they haven't let it, they've had it go to rot, they've made as much as they want to make out of it, and now they're going to get rid of it, and then somebody's going to go in, and it's not the property. There's so many buildings, we know that. They're not the property that it used to be. And I think some of the concerns in the town is, do we want it to go from up here to, in 10 years, to maybe down here?
I mean,
And that's a concern that we as townspeople and residents have to be concerned about, because it's going to reflect on our town and our property values and everything else that is why we live in North Reading. And that's kind of a concern. Not that you're going to sell, because we know that's going to happen, but we don't know, and it's not your fault. and you can't help it. But what our concern is, do we want to let somebody come in and do that, and it's fine for 5 years? Then it gets sold and it goes downhill. Then it goes sold and it's downhill.
This has been mentioned many times, this idea that as it sells, it goes down, okay? If we build it for X, we will sell it for 1.2X or 1.15X, whatever. We'll sell for more. So, and again, these are not insignificant values.
No, they're not.
This is not a local developer throwing a couple grand here and there. This is very meaningful money.
It is,
And when they invest the money, you can't invest money
if you're not going to make a profit.
if you don't maintain the asset, you don't make the profit. Because the first thing that happens when you don't maintain the asset is the rents go down. So if you bought the asset based on X level of occupancy and rental performance, and you don't manage the asset, the rents will go down, which means the value of the asset will go down, which means your meaningful, large, $40+ million investment has gone down. Like, that's just math.
I understand.
And so I know people keep talking about this. I've never seen a scenario where this has occurred. If you're investing, if you're a professional investment firm, you're investing $40, $50 million of your money, you need to make sure it's worth more at the end of your stay than when you went in. And that is through proper maintenance systems, taking care of the building, if the roof, the roofs, we have meaningful warranties on our roofs, but, and a proper manager of an asset is doing a set aside, a reserve for replacement every year, setting aside capital for all the things that will likely break in year 8, 12, 15. So I absolutely understand the idea that, wow, this is part of North Reading. It is. It's part of the community. We don't want it to look bad. I get it from that perspective. I guess what I don't get it from the perspective that I've never, at the level that I'm doing this, which is institutional level, it's Wall Street money. It's not Joe Schmo. I don't want to use the word inconceivable, but it's like, I've never seen that. That would be a gross mismanagement of money by the company, by the individuals that allocated the money. All those people get fired. Like, I just haven't seen it. So I get the idea that you want to make sure the asset looks good. I do too.
That remains a viable asset.
Yeah,
Community, yes.
I've never seen a scenario where at this scale that has occurred. I just haven't. Now, if you're talking about different asset classes, then that might not be the case. If you're talking about, lower tier strip malls, Class C hospitality, maybe there's some that maybe this somehow happens, but I haven't really seen it. And I, again, we can't prove hypotheticals. We can't disprove that the black swan exists or doesn't. But, the parties that will be buying this asset, if and when we sell it, are Wall Street firms that are, and particularly think of like an insurance company. They're buying this asset. They're investing premiums to buy this asset so they have a predictable stream of future cash flows to allocate to claims for the next 10, 20 years. If the property isn't managed well, they're not getting a stream of cash flows. That's a problem for them. That means that they will underperform on their ability to pay claims. And so it's just, never seen it. Just never seen it. And as, I'm also a professor at Northeastern, I teach real estate finance. I've never really heard of it. To be painful. So I understand why you care about it, but I think that the incentives, the scale, as it were, overwhelmingly ensure the thorough, proper management of the asset. I can't prove more than, again, there's just no way to prove it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
For the record, we like our small town little developers, Joe Schmoes.
Well, until they stop managing the assets, and then
But we see a great deal of them coming before our boards. They there.
Not picking on anybody.
Nope. I just want to make sure that, everybody gets their knowledge. Please, thank you.
Hi, I'm Don Putney, 20 Riverside Drive. We need this housing unquestionably in this area. The governor has supported housing and expanding it. We need it badly. But quite frankly, I'm opposed to the project, and it's not for any of the quality of the building or the people who are invested to make a living on it. There's nothing wrong with any of that. My feeling is it's the wrong location for the following reasons. One, when you do your testing of the impact on the community, you take experience from other locations that you've done building in, and you utilize those to project correctly what it's going to do to this community. That's all hindsight. Experience, but it's still all hindsight. You cannot predict for the future. None of us can do that. Therefore, those figures, which may be very accurate by experience, may not apply to this project. So therefore, I do have a concern about, what's going to happen? I think we all have that concern, what's going to happen. The second part of that is the number of people and the impact on the community itself as far as the expenses of the community are concerned. This provides tax income to the community, which is a big benefit. I'm not knocking that part of it. However, it does have an impact on the schools. I don't know that your experienced numbers that you use to calculate the impact on the schools will be accurate in the future. I don't know that the location, as far as the distance from businesses where people can acquire groceries and other services, will have a great impact because it is so far away from those services. I'm concerned about that part of it greatly. I'm concerned about that from the viewpoint of providing housing for those people who can least afford housing. I don't think they're going to live in this facility. It's going to be people at a different socioeconomic level who are going to move there. The other thing of concern is how many people are they going to bring in. You did give certainly experienced statistics as far as how many children would be expected to impact the schools and things of that nature. They're projections, and I don't question your expertise, but I can't predict the future, and neither can you. The last one is, I am a member of the IRWA, which is the Ipswich River Watershed Association. I'm not concerned about the impact of your effluent systems. Those two systems, I've seen them designed in other areas, and I've looked at them all the way down the river. The big concern is the environmental impact overall of taking a piece of land and building something human on a land that is in an environmental piece that has been that way for centuries. I live in a house that has all woods around it. It changes over years, and the reason I know it changes over years is I have stone walls out in the woods. That means that was a field or a pasture at one point in past history. But it's nature that changes it. It brought it back again once the people stopped using it for a pasture. I would not like to see it go back and be used again and drive the animals out, or have an effect on the river, which I assume from normal flow over pavement versus over natural land is different. I guess I don't want to see our land, as the chairman said, change. We like the nature of our community, and I think the impact is just too large where it is. I would love to see it somewhere else in the community, but I think it's the wrong location. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I know it's a small gathering in the community. Is there anything further? Okay. In all due respect, appreciation. This has been going on for several months now, and we always intended this final public hearing day to be a summary and/or an opportunity to clarify issues. And I think that while it might seem to be beyond the scope of the parameters of a 40B application, I think that these concerns or even the revisitation of concerns that were raised and hopefully addressed and/or, discussed previously, I think there's merit in making sure that they're put forward, especially for purposes of summary, as is tonight for all intents and purposes. Since we have the peer review leader here with us, is there anything that you might want to add to the conversation tonight? Maybe, beyond, actually having heard or seen a compilation or more than several of these meetings where you may not have been directly involved, but again, are as aware of the various aspects of the project as any of us might be.
Well, it may sound awkward, but I've enjoyed the process as a professional of being involved. I think that it was a successful process. As a peer reviewer, we tried our best to thoroughly vet the project, the proposed plans, and all the information that was put forward. I've been in this as an engineer for very close to 40 years. At one point in my career, I was on Mark's side, representing a major national development firm. So I've experienced that, and I think they've been attentive, okay, to the issues, and I enjoy the one-on-one communications that they have, because that's what it ultimately comes down to. I'm a highway engineer in my career, right? I redesign main streets, typically, right through towns, and it's not easy. But I get to know people in that process, one-on-one in their front yards. And that's where some of the best projects are designed, is in the front yards or perhaps the backyards in this case. So I think that the town should be, I'm impressed with the public participation that's been throughout. I'm impressed with the board and their ability to see this application through the process. So I don't know what else I could say, but I think that it was a good process, and I'm comfortable. And again, I think you've heard from us before. We represent the town's interests, but we also represent the industry, all the different disciplines that are involved, and I would say that the project is well engineered at this point.
Thank you. A note was passed. The building inspector couldn't be with us tonight. He had a personal matter to attend to. He asked to make sure that the developer, that they're aware that he would prefer a third-party review of the plans as they progress through the construction.
I think before he issues the building permit, he wants them reviewed.
That's not uncommon amongst various towns. I mean, that's not uncommon. The devil's in the details, I guess. But so I guess, is the third-party reviewer being paid out of building permit proceeds? Is it? I mean, there's that question. But, and but it is not uncommon for a town to engage a third-party reviewer to provide supplemental review feedback. So I don't.
So did Jerry add any thought on, again, there's an attendant cost in that?
I
Maybe
don't know whether I assumed or
Mr. Gilberto, so
another peer review.
I don't think you have to, typically I'll put conditions regarding that and affirm that at the planning stage.
okay.
I'll include that in the draft.
And
And
so
I've never seen one that building inspector was able to review conformance and final plans without assistance of peer review. Never seen a project of this nature. So it's pretty standard. I'll put it in. If you tell me to draft it, approval with conditions, I will have that as a condition.
and in those conditions that you've seen in the past, again, just to be clear, the cost of that, is that shared? Is it borne? Is it?
It's typically done with a peer reviewer that they make a deposit.
Thank you. From the conversation tonight, is there anything else that the applicant would like to put on the record to possibly clarify or amend or modify? Pick your word if you want.
Probably the only thing I'd add or offer is this can be a painful process for neighbors, for the developers. It's adversarial. It pits people against each other, and interacting can be a challenge. I will say though that every time I've interacted with people that were unsupportive of the project, we ended up doing things that made the project better as a consequence of that. The feedback we've received, I understand we're probably never going to make 4 and 8 Lynn happy, right? But I think we are very much trying to be good neighbors and address many, if not all, their concerns. And the feedback, the interplay, has been integral to that. It just doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so they were kind to meet with us, talk with us, and yes, I'm building housing, which is desperately needed in Eastern Massachusetts, and I acknowledge that we're building next to smaller single-family homes. I do not believe that it creates a negative, but I'm also willing to work with landscaping, garages, fencing, and other approaches, removal of balconies, to try and minimize that impact. And so, I think the project's a better project for the interaction with the board as well, and certainly with the peer reviewers. It's adversarial, it's challenging, it can make people feel uncomfortable, but it does result in a better product, and I think we're at that place now.
Good, thank you. Just more specifically, did anything come out of the meeting tonight that you might want to change with regard to additional waivers or modification of the waivers, just so we're clear on those? I know
I don't.
it's kind of a hodgepodge, but that was the idea of allowing for these things to be visited.
No, there's nothing we wish to amend in the waiver list. Certainly, though, we haven't really heard any discussion of it from the board, so if you all have questions on the waiver list, we'd be happy to answer them.
Members? I know, so respectfully, this is the first 40B project that this specific board has ever been tasked with. So it seems not that our ability or capability is in question. I think it always is, because, you know, what's the phrase I use? You get what you pay
for.
when you have voluntary boards in towns, and they're wonderful. I enjoy the work on behalf of my community. But when you rely on the work of volunteers, you often get what you pay for. I have read through the documents, but again, the sophistication of understanding the nuances of phraseology or terminology, caliber, is it? Is always appreciated. So I turn to town council and give a nod, because I'm burdening you with the comment earlier that you've been looking at the waiver list since December. So, is it? So, if you might, council thoughts.
Yeah, it's a little late in the process to go through each of the waivers in painstaking detail. Sometimes boards will do that as part of the hearing process. I think in this instance, you gather so much information on before you. I would feel comfortable, if you are, that if you sort of have a discussion that you reach a consensus about what you'd like to see in terms of a draft, whether that's a draft denial decision or a draft approval with conditions. I would craft that for you, and then in connection with that, I would look at the waivers in more detail, and I would add recommendations to anything specific that I saw a potential issue with it, that it's either not needed or it should be granted in part. Again, only consistent with what you're telling me to do. So I would need to know from you before I, give you recommendations on the waivers, what you're looking at. Are you looking at an approval with conditions?
And that's all post-public hearing.
Correct.
Okay, so this is what I was, for me personally. So I know these were sent out again, just through our offices. So just taking this one because it's the one in front of me. Parking and loading space standards as shown on plans. So there's multiple plans, and
the decision will specify the plans that you're approving.
Right. So for our purposes with the applicant in your office, everything that's been submitted is what we can rely on, and there's, so we might choose to just, there's a consistency within those plans. Parking might be the simple, stupid one to take because it's just parking. But, when as I read through the waiver request or listing, I took it as, okay, this is what they're seeking. And I have no problem with them asking for whatever it is they want to ask for. I leave the consideration of those waiver requests to the deliberation within the board as we decide the merits of the entire project. So when you ask me if there's anything else, I don't know what else you might ask to be
A
waived.
useful way of looking at it is if you're contemplating granting an approval with conditions of a 200-unit project as proposed in their latest plan iteration, then typically you would grant what waivers are needed to achieve that. So you're not going to say, oh, I approve a 200-unit project, and then you deny waivers that are needed to build that project. So that's really the perspective that you look at. So that's why, again, for me, I would need to know which way you're leaning. And then typically what different boards do it differently. Usually I will have the waiver request attached as an exhibit to your decision. And then you'll say, and the waivers are granted in accordance with Exhibit A, your waiver list, and anything not specifically granted is not waived, is in effect. Anything else, any other local regulation, not specifically waived is not waived. You put that in there. And you'll have it as an exhibit. And typically, I would work off of the spreadsheet provided by the applicant, which she already has provided. I would create a document out of her spreadsheet, and then I would put have it in a suitable format for an exhibit to your decision, then you would be incorporating into your decision. I would add typically a box to the spreadsheet saying granted, denied, or granted in accordance with Plan XYZ. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense to me. Board. And the shared uses of the, what will be part, like, I think you described it herein as parcel B as opposed to parcel A. Parcel A, there's a designation here which would be the development, parcel B being, for lack of a better way of thinking of it, which is currently Teresa's and Resorts North. Those shared uses, easements, things like that, those are just very much like the subdivision itself. You know, we just reference them as need that easement as a condition to that grant.
So I do think we proposed a condition related to that the access agreement with Teresa's Restaurant will be recorded prior to building permit issuance.
Okay. Again, we spent some time over the last week just getting a clarification of our role in the subdivision, and I guess this thing does come full circle because I think it was one of the first questions I had is how are you building a property on a parcel that hasn't been subdivided yet? And then I've learned in this process that, it is, the application is subject to the approval. The application's approval, the subdivision is subject to the application's approval.
Yeah, sometimes there are state laws involved, but the local permitting authority is acting like a local authority with regard to that state statute. So that would apply to like subdivision approvals, A&R approvals, issues like that. Local historic district. I've been, I won't say fighting, but I've been opposing 40B projects on behalf of municipal clients for many years. In one of the cases that I lost at the state's highest court, unfortunately I've lost a lot of 40B cases because
The nature of the
law
legislation.
favors the 40B projects. But one of those cases was arguing that a local, a regional historic commission was not subject to the 40B procedure because it was a state statute. And in that case, many years ago, the SJC had very clear law that even if it's a state statute, if that local board is acting as a local board, it would be subject to the procedure. So that's where you have that kind of crossover where they have the A&R plan coming before you for your endorsement as opposed to going to the different permit board.
And I know this all sounds like Charlie Brown hearing the teacher talk and it's wah, 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 but this is important for us to have this understood, and this is our last opportunity to address these, my questions at least, and please add on, or anybody, to where we can take a response, because again, once we close the hearing, those become much more finer and limited, if at all. Right? I think that's a good way of phrasing it. So the board, please.
So we deliberate in public. You help us write a decision. Do we then, like practically, you emailed us, we get together again in front of everyone and talk about your work on the off chance we disagree with something in there or want it modified? I guess, are we meeting 7 more times in the next 40 days, or are we meeting twice?
Yeah, that's pretty close to how it would typically work. A lot of times, on a project of this type of complexity, typically you'll ask the board would have council to draft the first draft. If the consensus of the board is you want to look at an approval with conditions, I will provide you with a draft approval with conditions. It will contain all the issues that you expect, jurisdictional issues, findings that are relevant to your ultimate decision, and then stages, what has to be satisfied prior to issuance of a building permit, what has to be satisfied prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, set up in that way. I will provide that draft to you in advance of your public deliberations. That would become a public document at that point. So people can look at it, but they wouldn't be able to comment on it. It's only for your consideration and deliberation at the next meeting. And then you could do it any number of ways. Either you look at it and you sort of mark places that you have questions or comments for council. You discuss it again amongst yourselves. And typically then a revised version would come of that as a result of any comments. And then I would provide you that proposed final for you to make the final decision and vote on. And then that would become final. You sign it, and then get filed with the town clerk's office. You don't have to do it that way, but it tends to work. And then that way, you don't have to have 100 meetings of deliberations in those 40 days. Typically, maybe one or two complex projects. And if you're really looking at it and questioning a lot of the language or the reasons for certain conditions, you may want to have time for 3 deliberation sessions. But, my sense is probably you need maybe 1 or 2 deliberations. The first deliberation on that first draft, and then the second deliberation if needed on considering again as a board the revisions. If it's close enough to your decision in those first deliberations, you could discuss it and make your final contingent on any final revisions to it at that meeting, and then you make it final after that. So.
And where these are all publicly noticed and we'd be back here, does the applicant typically watch the sausage, or they just wait for the final?
I'll be here.
Okay. Okay.
Is it 40 business days or just 40?
40.
So that brings us to April 14th. You close the hearing tonight.
Great. Payment taxes.
Which numerically we have to, right? Unless we agree to an extension, we're out of the...
I don't think we can extend the decision timeframe.
No, sorry, I mean the hearing part. Like, wasn't tomorrow the...
Yeah, but you're not going to meet tomorrow, so you would close it tonight.
Yeah, 12:01 a.m. March 5th starts the 40-day count.
Right, you don't count the day that it commences on as the next day. So if you close the hearing tonight, the first day will be March 5 on your 40 days. I've never once come into a situation where the board has run out of time. Because you're not, and again, we don't have to do it this way. If you want to draft the decision, by all means.
I don't think, let's be clear, we're not saying that.
Yeah, no, but I mean, in other words, I'm just giving kind of guidelines about how I would normally do it. It's totally up to you how you want it done. But I've never had it that a board has asked me to draft a decision for deliberations and we've run out of time. In other words, I will get it to you in a timely manner as long as you can come up with a date that's reasonable.
With the close of any deliberation, with the close of any public hearing, and again, we have seen the range of all of them now that now that gone through the 40B process. I can say to basically my fellow town members that this board has seen a pretty wide range of applications. And there have been times when there are things that we don't particularly like. But our job isn't to be, to quote the case law, capricious or self-interested, possibly. And I'm on record before having joined the Board of Appeals because of the term of this application, that I've never been supportive of the development for any number of reasons, mine and those of other people in the community that I've heard from. But they've checked all the boxes. And I appreciate the last comments made by the gentleman. I mean, this admonition that we have to have greater public housing seems to be a banner that everybody wants to wave, but at the same time, it's an interesting question as to the impact of that and where it's felt and how it's developed and how it's done. And there are very few laws that I can tell you of, and I'm an attorney, and I did a long run of time doing criminal defense work. And there were several laws that would tie the hands of judges, and they would tell me in lobby how much they despised them. But their hands were tied. It doesn't change the role that they played in being the jurist or the arbiter, if you would. In this case, without, there's no reason on its face, as it's been submitted, to deny this project under the auspices of 40B. If you took that heading off of this, then yeah, every comment that's been made, quite frankly, if they didn't have it, they wouldn't be here. It's just that simple. And if they were here, it would be a totally different project. That's just the cards that are on that the hand that's been dealt. And I smile when I say that because I can tell you at the end any number of people I know in Everett that were, to this day have never accepted what developed there. And it's only getting bigger there. So it's an interesting question to be pondered. The boxes have been checked. And that notwithstanding, there are things that have to be ensured in terms of this project effectively being built. So when Attorney Bucci or Town Council or anybody says, approval with conditions, well, those are the safe, I used the word safeguards earlier. The conditions are meant, in my mind, to safeguard the development, how it's done, the manner in which it's done, all the things that have been touched upon from the, outside of this meeting. There was questions about, what time of the day would the trucks be rolling through? Is that a reasonable condition?
Yeah, for construction.
For construction, and I think they developed, the applicant said, yeah, we run just much like everybody else does, or nothing.
I mean, we're going to comply with the building code requirements,
Sure.
And what those hours are, the hours we perform to.
Right,
Yeah.
so, and that's where it gets interesting, because there's any number of times when we have a little bit of gray area that we can draw lines within in order to modify or alter those, but we are under the thumb, truly, of Chapter 40B. And I say that just as just a simple acknowledgement and practicality. And so to the board, it's an interesting idea. I think we'd be well served to ask town council to draft, and again, an initial draft of an approval with conditions, addressing the waiver list that has been submitted. And interesting question, if you start to draft that and I send you an email, is that appropriate? Sure. Okay, so that isn't any violation of public.
I would recommend generally save questions and comments for the deliberations. You don't want to have a running, you don't want to
Dialogue.
violate the open meeting law with a running meeting.
Okay.
But you've never abused the process once since I've known you, so I'm sure.
No, it's not that. I don't want to you know, I don't want wheels spinning, so to speak. So before, I mean, I have nothing further that I can think of. And that might be the only thing I've got here is that I can continue to in our deliberations, discuss these things. But when we close this public hearing, it doesn't just close it to the community, it closes it to the board. Because it defines the areas in which we can foster our deliberation in however our decision comes. And again, the decision has, unlike our other usual decisions, it doesn't have to be unanimous. It could be 2-1. So it's an interesting situation. Thoughts or comments from anybody along the same lines, or anything that you might want to think in terms specifically about how to proceed after tonight's meeting.
Just clarification, you're asking to start drafting, but we will still deliberate?
Well, I think it provides us framework.
Okay.
No, what I'd be looking for is the consensus that you want to see a draft approval of conditions. If you do, then I would recommend you give me a date to provide that to you by, and then you schedule your deliberations, and then you would talk about that as a quorum at your deliberations. You talk about the draft.
So we come into deliberations
With
and
paper in hand? Okay.
we just walked into a jury room, so let's see a show of hands before we start arguing with each other. And you say, deny, allow. That's really the only two choices.
Yeah, I was just clarifying, he's going to do some homework, so we have a piece of paper to talk
Work
about,
from.
but we're going to start the conversation. I was mostly saying that for the benefit of, that wasn't a 3-second deliberation.
But I think we have
This
to
is-
ask them for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
all I'd be looking for the benefit of the public is consensus from you in good faith that you think you're leaning toward an approval of conditions. If you are, then I will draft you an approval of conditions based on all the comments that you've received. And I will get that to you by date certain. You'll have it in advance of your meeting so that you can have read it, marked questions if you have time to do that, so that your deliberations will not be torturous. And you'll be able to sort of go page by page. Bob would say, does anybody have comments on, where's your first comment or question? You'd say, oh, it's on page 8. Okay, we go all the way to page 8, you do it that way, as opposed to seeing it for the first time in deliberations. You wouldn't want to be reading that at the time of deliberations. You'd want to have it in advance.
But you're saying if 2 out of 3 of us sitting here right now are thinking of that, you wouldn't then spend the time, which I presume would take a bit of time to prepare.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're not prepared to do that, then too bad for me. I mean, I'll come back for deliberations. I'll get the consensus then and give it to you on a shorter time frame. But if you're prepared to indicate that consensus tonight, it certainly makes it easier to finish everything you need to do in the 40 days. And again, that draft decision, once I'm done with it and it's provided to you for deliberations, that will become a public document. Neither the applicant nor the public will be able to comment on it, but they will be able to see it in advance of your deliberations, and then it'll be part of the record.
And one more reminder, if this project moves forward, we've then hit the numerical limit for 40B within, I think this is where we started this conversation months ago.
Oh, the safe harbor?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you will be in excess of the 10%.
Okay. Just there was a comment tonight about precedent setting, but this would be the end of.
What?
There was a comment earlier about precedent setting for the community on an approval of this project. So I was just clarifying, this wouldn't be precedent setting in the sense that we would have hit safe harbor.
Yeah, it's a rental project, so you get 100% of the units, and according to Danielle, I think she said it puts you well in excess of 10%.
Okay.
And remember, that's subject to the
Yeah,
census too, so that can go up and down.
So, for purposes of good faith, should we request a draft with conditions?
I'd like to see, yeah, number of conditions.
Yeah, please. It's a good start for it. Okay. Calendars. Before we
Well,
close the public hearing,
I mean,
everybody's got to pull a calendar.
yeah, I just mean like, do you need 5 days? Do you need 10 days? What?
I'm in the middle of a very complex trial that involves a battery energy storage facility, so I would like more than 5 days.
I was just throwing out numbers.
But I don't need,
7.
5. I just
So 6?
need something reasonable, other than 5 days.
6 calipers?
And so it kind of depends on when you think you might want to meet too, because I can.
So what's our deadline? It is
I think it's April 15th.
Valerie, is that your read? April, do you have April 15th?
I didn't actually count it.
Yeah. Now they're not counting
Yeah.
26, but if I told them if we wanted 191 units, we started counting goes
What I
for
usually do is
30 days would be April 4th or 5th.
I will be through the worst of my very intensely busy March as of March 13. So if you as long as I could have into that next week by like, the Wednesday or Thursday.
We're meeting on, Kathy, we're on the 19th for our usual business.
Are we planning on doing it on one
In
of your
tandem,
normal?
no. My hope would be to keep the deliberation separate, only because,
Why don't you decide when you think you want to have the deliberations on, and then I'll negotiate a deadline to get to the draft.
Sorry, what did we say 40 days was? The 14th?
Yeah, 14th, 15th. What about the 26th?
that's pressing pretty close.
Let me see what Matt said. Oh, he's not in it anyway.
Well, Matt,
He's not going to be around.
question. Matt isn't a voting, Matt Martin, who's attended all the, during the deliberation, is it open to the 5? We currently have 3.
Yeah, they can give input, but they can't vote.
They can't.
They could sit at the table with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He will not be around.
Sometimes on a 40B, you don't hear from your associate members until the thing is over, but
No, that's
if
fine.
he's here, yeah.
Could we do like the 24th? Does that give enough time? to
Is
do
anybody
something?
open to the week of March, Monday the 16th through the 20th? So you're wrapping your trial matter in and around Friday the 13th?
Another day is going to get scheduled, but my life is more manageable after the 13th. So if I could get as late into that week of the 16th as possible to get you the draft, I would appreciate it. And then if you're going to meet the following week.
Yeah, I'm unavailable 16, 17, 18.
What about 18th for you?
No, I meant, are you looking at the following week?
He wants to follow.
He wants to meet the following week, so I'm saying the 24th. Like he wants to get us the decision the 20th.
24th, 25th.
Okay. I'll take 23, 24. I'd like to, I would respectfully, my thought is the 24th, and that gives us the ability to toggle.
I have a conflict the 24th that I can't, I'm
Sure.
covering for somebody else, so I can't get it covered.
25th. I think we just,
25th would be great for me if it works for you. And then I would have if you pick the 25th, I can have the draft to you by the Friday before.
Okay.
That works.
And then we would be able to squeeze in potentially
You need it.
two more meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, did you pull out a physical calendar? Are y'all just not gonna comment on this?
I did, I apologize. I'm still- I'm a very busy individual.
Okay,
What works for me works. I have
Sorry.
not-
It was noted.
I just, okay, make sure I'm not the only one. I was like, wait, there's a photo on top.
There's a little cat that says hang in there.
Okay. 25th on your physical calendar. Okay. That was wild.
So, what time on the 25th? It's here.
6, 7, whatever you want.
I didn't say, I didn't say it. You tell who has kids.
It doesn't, it's irrelevant to me.
I mean, given my yawns tonight, could we do 6?
6 o'clock.
Sorry.
6 o'clock on the 25th.
Did you say that would be here?
Yes. And it's very much like watching TV with a clicker in your hand and you can't change the channel because you're not taking comments. And you can roll your eyes and you can erupt or smile or death scare me or whatever you, but it's, and
So it would
again,
be purely just listening to?
right, it's public hearing law requires us to, and again, I don't think I have to take, every time I bring up the conversation of 40B developments outside of the community of North Reading, ultimately, by and large, most people reply to them the same way that this community has commented to me, and just in passing, without an understanding of it. Hard-pressed to find anybody who really understands what we do here sometimes. But again, we're under the thumb of the law, and it's got its nuances and an understanding of it. And I don't want to pass that off as an excuse for what's going on here. It's not. And I have this discussion with my 11-year-old. There's a difference between reasons and excuses, and you have to understand the nuance of them. But, the only thing I'd like to say before I turn this over or close it, I meant what I said earlier. I have to go in with every time an applicant comes before this board and before me, there's an inherent sense of hope and trust that I, as a voting member of the Board of Appeals, has to put in the decision that I grant it whenever we grant something. And in this case, there is going to be something built there, and this is the application that, for all intents and purposes, I'm hard-pressed to find a reason as just someone who has to understand and comply with the rule state, chapter 40B. It's weird. I have to look at it and say, is there a reason not to? And I'm not seeing one under 40B. So it's this devil on one shoulder, and I've got a devil on the other shoulder. And they're just doing this thing that they're doing, and I'm vexed by it. But I want to just be sure that we ensure, as much as this board is empowered to make sure that if we do approve it, that we do our best to ensure the hope that I believe I have to put in the approval of it. And I hope my board members feel the same way, or more strongly, if at all. So, any thoughts finally before we should close tonight? Michelle, Brandon. Okay. So again, our
You
next
want to
meeting.
have NORCAM come to the deliberations? I was going to say, it'll be on YouTube or whatever, if you don't want to attend the meeting. If we-
Yeah, we will have NORCAM, because that will accommodate people who, I just told you, can watch, and it'd be no different. But it's a public meeting law. I know it was well-intentioned, but it's such an interesting little animal. Yeah, NORCAM, please. Okay, that being the case, and I'm going with the belief that there's nothing further from the community. With that, I'd like to bring a motion to close the public hearing with regard to the application for the development of 20 Elm Street, North Reading.
Second.
All in favor of the closing of the public hearing?
Brendan Riley, aye.
Bob Green, aye. Thank you, and thank you Eric, for your assistance.
And deliberations are on the 25th.
25th, 6 p.m. here.
Perfect, thank you.
Should there be a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yeah, I'd like to bring a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Brendan Riley, aye.
Bob Green, aye. Thank you. So noted.